Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make lemon ginger scones, or maybe you pronounce it scones, and this is what they look like. Now when these are freshly baked, the outside is wonderfully crisp, and yet inside they're very soft and bread-like, and they are so flavorful. We're going to add some crystallized ginger, lemon zest, and sliced almonds. So the first thing you need to do is to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 200 degrees Celsius. And then you need a baking sheet. I've lined mine with a piece of parchment paper, but you could just lightly butter it or spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. Now, I always make my scones by hand. So, in a large bowl, I have 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. To that, I'm adding 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar, and then 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of baking soda, and then 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. So, and then I'm just take a fork, or I'm using a whisk, mix all that together. And then you will need 1/2 cup, 113 grams of cold butter. Make sure your butter's cold. I'm using unsalted butter. I prefer the flavor, and I like to regulate the salt myself. You could use salted butter, and then I would just leave out the salt in the recipe. Now, I did cut it into small cubes because we are going to blend the butter into the flour, and it makes it easier if you kind of cut it in small pieces rather than have a big block. And then I like to cut the butter into the flour using a pastry blender, kind of a handy tool. You could use 2 knives, or you could just use your fingers for this. So you want to cut the butter into the flour until the butter gets into little small pieces, so that the flour mixture kind of looks like coarse crumbs. Okay, that looks good. Scrape that off. So this is what you're looking for. You can see little pieces of butter. If there's some larger ones, don't worry about it. And now, what we're going to do is, for the lemon, we're going to add the zest from 1 lemon. Now, always wash your lemons before you take the zest off. If you can, buy organic. And then, I'm using one of these microplanes. You could use your box grater, and we're just going to take, now when you're grating or using this, you want to make sure you just take off the outer yellow skin. You don't want that white underneath, because that's kind of bitter. So. And then we're adding some ginger. We're adding crystallized ginger, and this is what it looks like. So what this is ginger that has been cooked in a sugar syrup, and then coated with sugar. So when you eat it, it's kind of chewy, soft, chewy, and yet you get this real jolt of heat. So we're going to add 1/3 cup, which is about 55 grams of this crystallized ginger, and then I'm just going to cut it into, bite-sized pieces. Now, you can find crystallized ginger, of course, in specialty food stores. Sometimes it's in a can, or it's in tubs, or it can be in bulk. Health food stores always have it, but you can normally find it in your local grocery store. Typically, it's in the produce section, or at least that's where I find it, in tubs, and it's with all the other dried fruits like cranberries and all that. So, just cut that up, add that. So, and I'm also adding 1/2 cup, 50 grams of sliced almonds, because I really think the combination of the lemon, the ginger, and the almonds is pretty good. And mix all that. These are so good. You can really smell that lemon in here. So now we're going to bind our ingredients together with buttermilk. Now you can buy buttermilk, you can buy buttermilk powder, or you can make a real good substitute. You can take 1 cup, 240 milliliters, grams of milk, add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice or vinegar, just stir it together, let it sit at room temperature about 10 minutes. It's ready to use. Now you will need somewhere between 2/3 of a cup and 3/4 of a cup, which is 160, 180 mils. The reason I have a bit of a range is because you never know when you're making something like a scone, like how much liquid your flour will absorb. I'm going to start with the 2/3 of a cup, 160 mils. Then if I need to add more, I will. And the buttermilk is what makes our scones really soft, bread-like, quite tender. That's why I like to use it. And plus it adds, you know, a nice little tang to the scones. So now I'm just using, you could use like a spatula. You could use your hands for this. I'm just using the scraper. Now it will be dry. Resist adding the extra buttermilk at this point, because we want to get this started. I am going to use my hands now. A little messy, but got to be done. And this is why I like to make it by hand, so I can feel the dough. And too, when you use a mixer, there is a tendency to overmix, and then your scones can be a little tough. So that's another reason why I like to do it by hand. This is pretty good. Actually, I don't think I need to add any more. See, it's kind of comes together. It's a little sticky, but it's not like wet. So I think we're good. So now, put a little flour down. And then, so what we're going to do is just knead it a few times to bring it together. And then I'm just going to, it's sticking, you know, just put some flour. I'm just going to pat it. I mean, you could roll it, but why get another kitchen tool? I'm going to just pat it into a 7-inch, it's 18-centimeter round. You could use your ruler. I've made these a few times, so that's why it's about right. Now, if your hands get really messy, just take a little flour over your bowl and that flour will come off. Or you could do it in the sink. Okay, and then just take a knife. Now you could cut it out into rounds with a cookie cutter. I'm going to do the triangle shape. So I'm using a bench scraper. You can just take a knife and just cut that in half, and then half again and half again. So we're going to get 8 out of this. And then just space them. And good thing about this bench scraper is that you can clean up easy. Put that off to the side. So now what I like to do is to brush the tops of the scones with a little bit of cream. You could use milk, and that, you know, helps with browning. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some more sliced almonds and just put it on the top. You know, one thing, I think it looks good and it adds a little bit of crunch, but two, it kind of tells people when they look at it, they go, oh, I bet there's almonds in there. So that's another reason why I do that. So. Okay, the last one. Just kind of press down to make sure that those almonds are sticking to the top of the dough. So now, if you have a regular oven, by that I mean the heat source is on the bottom, then what I like to do is, because we're baking these scones at pretty high heat, is you can put your baking sheet inside of another sheet, and that will protect them, so that they won't get too brown. If you have a convection oven like I do, a fan oven, then you don't need to do that. So what we're going to do is bake these. I find 18 to 20 minutes is a good range there. You never know, because everybody's oven's a little different. But what they will do is they will rise a bit. They will turn a beautiful golden brown. They will be pretty firm, but just a little soft on the top to the touch. You could take a toothpick and insert it into the center, and it will come out clean. So 18, 20 minutes. Okay, so our lemon ginger scones are ready. Put your baking sheet on a wire rack, and as you can see, they turn nice brown. And when I feel them, the tops are just a little soft, but pretty firm. So what I'm going to do is let them cool down a little bit, and then when we come back, we will try one. So let's try one. They're still a little warm, just how I like them. The day you make scones, that outside crust is going to be nice and crisp. Now, if you cover them and store them overnight, just keep in mind that that crust will soften. Still tastes great, but a little not as crisp. Now, these are soft and bread-like inside. You have the lemon and then the almonds and then that ginger. What I like is it's kind of sweet, but then you just kind of get this little jolt of spiciness, which I think is kind of a surprise, and I really like it. So try these, and until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com.